Hey everyone, I'm Gevin, and welcome to episode 18 of Lowlights. It's the first Wednesday of the month. That means this is a Lowlights Reels episode. No guest, no Dave, because he's traveling, just me recapping some of the recent conversations we've had with our guests. Guests like speechwriter, New York Times best-selling author, and now amateur surfer David Litt.
We were on the beach, and I was trying to keep it together and play it cool, and finally, his name's Matt. I was like, Matt, I got to admit, I'm a little bit scared. And he just looks at me and goes, hey, it's only water. And I was like, oh, thank you. Right? Like, that's so reassuring. And he goes, hey, it's only drowning. And then he just runs into the ocean.
Political strategist Chuck Rocha.
When I went to high school, I became an all-state football player because I liked fighting. And so I was protecting a quarterback, protecting my sister, protecting my grandmother. And now I'm in this position in this union, and my job is to protect my coworkers from the man telling them that they can't do this or that, and they have to come through me first. Holy shit, I was really good at that.
Former Washington Governor Jay Inslee.
Well, I tell you, this is the greatest relief from the real world that I've had for some period of time. Lacrosse, basketball, man, this is what life should be about.
And Pennsylvania Congressman Chris Deluzio.
So, you have the highs of the Steelers are winning, the Pens won back-to-back cups, but then you also have the pain of being a Pirates fan, and so it teaches you some humility about how to root for your team when they're getting the crap kicked out of them for decades. It's a good combination of how to learn how to be a sports fan.
This is Lowlights. Let's get into it. Okay, so before we get into the reels, I do want to talk a little bit about this week. First up, will Boston finally be getting a WNBA team? It seems like they might be. So over this past weekend, the news broke that one of the minority owners of the Boston Celtics is acquiring the Connecticut Sun. The Connecticut Sun being a WNBA team that plays out of Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, and he wants to bring the team to Boston. They could play in Boston as early as 2027. Now, not only did he purchase the team for a record $325 million, but he also plans to invest about $100 million to build a practice facility for the team in Boston. Now, keep in mind that this is not final, and in fact, the WNBA Board of Governors does have to vote on any sort of relocation that takes place. And in fact, we talked about on this show that the WNBA announced a series of expansion teams, including Cleveland and Philly and Detroit, that will be starting to play in the next few years. A statement came out over the weekend from the WNBA where they're kind of pumping the brakes a little bit on this news about Boston, and they were like, well, keep in mind that Boston was not on the list of these expansion teams we just announced, and moving the team to Boston will take a vote of the WNBA Board of Governors. So far from certain. Definitely want to talk about this more when Dave is back, but it does seem like Boston, don't hold your breath, might finally be getting a WNBA team. Will Dave actually go see them play? I do hope so. Over in the NFL, training camps have been in full swing. We actually had our first bit of NFL game action as the Los Angeles Chargers faced off against the Detroit Lions in the annual Hall of Fame game. And if you've never heard of that, the Hall of Fame game is pretty much this game that gets played every year in Canton, Ohio, which is where the NFL, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, is located. And they play it to celebrate the induction of the new Pro Football Hall of Fame members. The game doesn't really mean anything. The starters don't even play, and it really isn't even officially a preseason game. But at least for me, it's fun to feel like football season's around the corner, which it is. The preseason's kicking off in just a few days. I'll actually be going to take in some preseason action, I guess by the time this episode airs, tomorrow in Baltimore as the Ravens face off against the Indianapolis Colts. But nevertheless, if there's football that was played, I'm going to talk about it. So congrats to the Chargers, led by quarterback Trey Lance, if you remember him. Again, he's not the Chargers starting quarterback. That's Justin Herbert. But he got some action in the Hall of Fame game as the Chargers defeated the Lions by the score 34-7. But an even bigger congratulations, not just to the Chargers and Trey Lance, but an even bigger congratulations to this year's Pro Football Hall of Fame class. Absolute legends like Jared Allen and Antonio Gates. I grew up watching both of them, as well as some older players like Sterling Sharp and Eric Allen, who both finally got their gold jackets after a little bit of waiting. I actually want to play a clip from Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, who had a conversation with Eagles great Eric Allen about the whole process of waiting to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, what it took to actually get there, and how he eventually got the news. So I want to roll that clip.
Let's talk about the call.
Yeah.
First off, I think people want to know, like, are you surprised when you get the call? Do they set it up? Like, how's that work? And then what are you feeling? So give me the nuts and bolts. Give me the X's and O's on the call.
Okay.
And then tell me about your heart and what you were feeling.
Yeah. First, it's a long time, and that people who know me and kind of, that's the first thing a lot of people say. Hey, man, it was a long time. But I really never looked at it like that. I always looked at it was just going to be whenever they got it right. Because if they didn't change the criteria to get in there, I was going to get in and just eventually win. So and I was always busy. I was always working. And, when Hall of Fame stuff came around, I'd be like, oh, yeah, I played with that dude. Oh, yeah, that's great, man. I never had any kind of ill feelings about anybody.
Yeah, you kind of moved through your day and moved
Not
on.
until last year. Last year, it kind of started to creep up on me a little bit. I was like, hey, hold up. It's like, hold up, man. Let's check who's in there. And, let's start kind of figuring out what's going on here. So last year was the first year that I actually kind of went out and kind of pounded the pavement for myself, and we got close. We got to the semifinalists. You get a phone call the week before the Super Bowl. Hey, EA, sorry you didn't make it. You can't say anything until, after the NFL honors, but hopefully you'll be there next year. So, okay. So this year came up, did a little more things, and the Raiders and Eagles are both amazing at making sure I was speaking with the right people. I didn't know at the time the Hall of Fame had changed the criteria to get in, and they let go of some people because they weren't really taking it seriously. So it was like 85% now, where, up until that point, it had been like 70, 75%. So a little more difficult, and they allowed some Hall of Fame players to actually add, like, some suggestions.
Yeah, like advocate a little bit.
Yeah, right. So all those things were great for me, obviously.
Oh, I love that. And it's true. I mean, this was a long time coming for EA. Very happy for him. Very glad that, a dream deferred ultimately did not end up being a dream denied for him. But, okay, moving on. So by now you've probably heard about the horrific tragedy that took place at the NFL headquarters in New York City this past week. I'm going to have more to say on this in the weeks to come. I worked in that office. I walked in and out of the lobby where the deranged gunman sprayed bullets every day. I walked in and out of that lobby. The NFL employee who was shot was a close friend of mine. We worked together on the same team. We sat next to each other every single day. I know his family. I saw him just a few weeks ago at the start of the summer. He's a fan of this podcast. He's always texting me when he listens to our episodes. I remember he texted me like, hey man, just listen to the Chuck Rocha episode. I love the part you talked about fishing with your dad and grandpa growing up. Or he actually listened to the last of these Lowlights Reels episode and texted me about it, and was just like, hey, like, I love that you did that. It's a great episode great idea to do a recap episode. And so when I heard that night that he had been shot, I mean, at first I just simply couldn't believe it. These mass shootings, unfortunately, are happening more and more often. At least for me, they've never hit as close to home as this one did. I was in the middle of cooking in the kitchen. I had like a Netflix show going on, and when I heard that he had been shot, I mean, I turned the stove off, turned the Netflix off, and right there in the kitchen just had to fall to my knees and pray. And until I heard that he was going to be okay, that's all I could do, right there in the kitchen. And by now you've probably heard that he is okay. He's doing well considering the circumstances. I actually got to talk to him on the phone last week, just a few days after the, shooting happened. He sounded so strong, which, just gave me so much strength. And I know there's some reporting out there, with his name attached to it, but I was texting with him earlier today, and he's not quite ready, for us to sort of publicly share his name. I want to respect his privacy, but, when he's ready, and especially when Dave is back, there's a lot more that I know we want to say about what happened. Just a terrible, terrible tragedy. So many layers of mental health and the CTE piece, depression, disappointment, and taking out those feelings by murdering innocent people. Suffice to say, we have to end this epidemic of gun violence. We have to address this epidemic of mental illness, especially, among men. But, my friend, as many of you maybe have read out there in the news articles that have been published, he's a true hero. You can read in those articles about, the lives that he saved. He was the only NFL employee who ended up getting shot. And I think a big part of that is because he called, and again, this has been reported, he took the time to call other folks on the team and warned them about what was going on. And I think that saved so many lives. And, for those of you who don't know him, it might just be a shock, a surprise, right? Reading about how even in that situation, that state of mind, he had the wherewithal to think about other people and to warn them, to save other lives. But I'll tell you that none of that surprised me, just because that's who he is, and I know him. And in those moments of crisis, I feel like that's when your true nature and your true character are revealed, and I think that's definitely what happened in this case. So, buddy, if you're listening to this, as you're recovering, I hope you know how much I love you, how much I love your family, how grateful I am that you're alive, and how hard I'm praying for you in this recovery journey. So, more to say on that. To be continued for now, just, again, not just to my friend, but to the whole 345 Park Avenue and NFL families, those who lost loved ones in the shooting, those who were affected. I'm so sorry, and just lifting up at this time. So with that, let's get into some reels, which is what this episode is all about. So I want to start with David Litt. This was a really fun interview. David's absolutely hilarious. There were, some moments of our conversation that did not ultimately make it into the episode that aired. But even from those segments, such a funny guy. I loved hearing him talk about what it was like writing, especially comedy, for President Obama, which he did with Dave. And of course, getting into his new book, It's Only Drowning, which is out now and which you should definitely order and read. So cool hearing him tell the story about how he learned to surf. And surfing with his MAGA brother-in-law, which is like an interesting wrinkle. But there's a moment when I asked him, what it was like, why he chose to pick up such a dangerous hobby, especially at a moment, and he talked about this when, he was dealing with some mental health challenges. This was during the COVID era and was experiencing, some depression. And, his answer was fascinating. And honestly, so real. He essentially said that he didn't really know how dangerous surfing was before he started surfing. And, he made the point that was probably for the better. So I want to roll that clip.
Originally, what I really liked about surfing was it just took my mind off existential dread. But ultimately it became, I felt like not only am I distracting myself, I'm actually learning a ton about myself and being not just a surfer, but being a person in the world.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, oh, there's a book here. I was like, oh, I'm embarrassing myself. Yeah. I'm learning. And the stuff that I'm learning is not specific to me. Okay, actually, this feels like a book.
Yeah. Well, I think what's funny is that a lot of people, when they're going through mental health challenges, depression, anxiety, they turn to things that are relatively safe and low risk. They're safe and fun. I mean, pick up walking, running, listening to music, cooking. You picked something that could have, to your point earlier, very easily have ended your life right then and there, and involves a lot of failure until you get good at it. So what was that process like? And do you have any, I guess, sort of reflections on those earlier days when you probably were falling off the surfboard quite often?
The secret to picking up a dangerous hobby, it turns out, is not knowing it's a dangerous hobby when you pick it up. I didn't really have any idea, right? Like, I had listened to the Beach Boys, so I was like, okay, I have something.
Very good training. Yeah. Right.
It's also one of those things where you watch people do it and you're like, oh, that looks very, like, there's a lot of flow. And you're like, there's a lot of flow because they're doing a hard thing that they're good at. So you don't imagine yourself as much as you sort of see people who know what they're doing. And it was brutal. And I think actually, I'm glad I didn't know that when I started, because the experience, not just of the failing a lot, but also the kind of low level danger and pain, right? One of the things surfing really accustomed me to, in a way that actually now I'm like beginning to lose that, was just a tolerance for like, not injury, but kind of constant you're in pain. So sore, but also like surfboards are very hard objects, and they like you fall and it hits you. Happens a lot, right? That it like catches you. Whereas some of that can be deadly. Most of the time it is.
Yeah, and then okay, so great clip. And then we continue to talk about sharks, which again was like further confirmation for me that I'll never pick up surfing. But very happy for David that he's found this, that he's found this passion, that he's found this hobby, and even happier for him to see all the success that the book has had so far. David has been on practically every single major talk show imaginable, but hey, you heard from him first right here on Lowlights. Okay, and then our next episode after that was with my friend Chuck Rocha, a political strategist, a self-proclaimed man's man. And if you listen to the episode, which I hope you did. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I love Chuck's candor, his realness, and I think maybe my favorite line was when he said that chicks don't want to date a fat ass, which was hilarious. This is when he was talking about why he lost so much weight after high school, so that's the context. But hey, I mean, body positivity is important too. But that was a hilarious line. But I mean, he has such a powerful story, going from... He doesn't have a college degree. He was a single father at a young age. He went from working in a rubber tire factory, took on a responsibility as sort of the lead union rep in the factory, and to where he is now, one of the most sought after political strategists in the country. And that story for him really informs how he approaches his work, and I think makes him so successful, especially in crafting political messages to reach working class folks, and especially working class Black and brown folks, and men at that. I thought there was this interesting moment when, he opened up about a lot of, I guess, what most people call imposter syndrome. Feeling like you don't belong in certain spaces, feeling like you don't measure up, in these spaces where you most definitely do belong. But hearing him talk about, navigating imposter syndrome, how, he experiences the very same insecurities that I certainly do, and that so many people out there do. Hearing him talk about how he overcomes that imposter syndrome, how he overcomes those insecurities, I thought was awesome. So let's roll that clip.
And here's the point I want to make, is that we want to sound smart just for the goodness of sounding smart. I live with, even though I am Chuck Rocha, and I'm talking about myself in the third person now here like an egotistical asshole, but I know the persona that folks think about me, and I'm that on TV, I'm that in real life. I say a lot of shit that gets me in trouble, but I am who I am. But I'm also very insecure, and it's okay, because I have to be in the most powerful rooms in the country. And if somebody said and rolled a map down and said, show me where Germany is on this map, I couldn't probably do it. I make it get close because I know where Europe is and Asia. But little things like that, when they're talking about the nuances of a cap and trade economic system, I don't know what they're talking about. I have a general understanding a little bit because I'm 56 years old now. But you have to remember, I am Generation X. I came of age before the internet, and now I've dealt with the internet. I am the last bastion of somebody who did my homework in a world book with paper, a whole set of them, and then now have a new Substack and a TikTok, and was making TikTok videos this morning at the gym, which I'm sure we'll get to in a little bit.
Yeah.
So being able to evolve and being able to do that's one. And the last point is, don't be scared to be you. We are taught our whole life we have to be a certain way. We have to wear the khaki pants, wear the white button up, get the blue blazer, talk about what college we went to, talk about where we're going to vacation, talk about the things in social circles. And we're scared to talk about what makes us different in our personal experience. When you're in that room in corporate America, nonprofits or campaigns, know that everybody else has that same experience of college, whatever that college experience may have been. It could have been debt. It could have been their mom and daddy rich. It could be that they're super poor because they spent all their money to go to college. Everybody's different. And whatever that little thing is that makes you different, Was your grandparents African immigrants? Was your uncle somebody that fled Haiti to come here? Was somebody else in your life somebody who'd come from Ireland and started, whatever the thing is? I tell you all of those things to say, lean into the piece that makes your part of a story, add something to a conversation that may not be out of a book or out of something you're supposed to learn in college. It took me a long time not to be feeling inadequate because I talk like this. And then I started just leaning into, look, I talk like this. It used to be a lot worse, my accent, but it makes me different.
What do you mean a lot worse?
Well, when you talk like this here, folks can't understand you. So you really literally have to work on your English, right? So lean into what makes you different.
I love that so much. The idea of leaning into what makes you special, leaning into what makes you you. So honestly, take a minute, right? Ask yourself, if you're listening to this right now, what is it that makes you you? Is it where you grew up? Is it the languages that you speak? Is it your age? Is it your accent? Is it, your skills, your dreams, your ambitions, your aspirations? It's probably, I'm guessing, some combination of those things. And I really appreciate, Chuck reminding us that we shouldn't shy away from those things, because those are the things that make us who we are. And, when it comes to being you, nobody else can be you. So appreciate Chuck for being so vulnerable, being so real with us, opening up about those experiences, those insecurities, and reminding us to lean into what makes us special, that lean into what makes us who we are. So moving on to our next interview with former Washington governor, three-term governor, Jay Inslee. I really enjoyed this interview, and I feel like listening to it, and I can certainly say talking to him, it definitely felt like he enjoyed it too. Gave him a chance to relive his high school basketball state championship glory days, to joke about trash talk with President Obama when they were playing basketball together when Jay Inslee was a member of Congress and President Obama was in the White House. And also to talk about issues that very near and dear to his heart, that he's dedicated his whole career to working on, like climate action and gun safety, as Arnie Duncan, former guest here on Lowlights, also has worked so hard on. There were a lot of really cool moments from our conversation, I think, but what was most interesting to me, just because I am such a political nerd, was hearing him describe what it was like to run for president. I mean, how many times you get to talk to someone intimately and hear them describe what that experience was like. So let's roll that clip.
Well, first off, running for president was a great experience. And for me, for two reasons. Number one, it was so inspiring just to meet people all over the country who believed in America, who believed in our basic values, were willing to be engaged. It was very inspiring. You can end up being cynical given how slow democracy and everything is, but just meeting these people all over the country who really believed in the ability to improve our community is very inspiring. Second, I do think that I was able to elevate the need for clean energy policies to build a clean energy economy. And that did succeed. When I started, I wanted to make sure that we tried to raise all of the candidates' ambition levels on fighting climate change. And that succeeded. And including with the president, who I give tremendous credit for getting the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure bill. But, when he started, he wasn't quite there yet with that level of ambition. And I know when we were debating one time, somebody asked him something about coal, what he was going to do about coal. And he said something like, I don't know, we'll work on it. And it wasn't my turn to talk. I usually really obey all the rules, right? I don't want a technical foul. I said, work on it. What do you mean work on it? The planet's on fire, And so he really did raise his ambition, did a fantastic job getting these bills into place, and they've been extremely successful. Yeah. So I do think running had a benefit. And as far as when you do something to run for office or help a candidate, what I would say is it is a tremendous experience if you care about something to get engaged at any level, whether it's school board, helping your friend get elected to the county council, or running for president. They all have tremendous benefits in your personal life because you get to know a lot of people, you're engaged in your community, you learn about your community, things that you didn't know.
So I just love the perspective that he has there. And you heard it, right? It's answers like those to me that when you hear them, you're like, oh yeah, that person is in politics for the right reason. That person's in politics because they care about their community. They care about making a difference in their community and in the country and in the world. I also want to roll a second clip because I think it's important for us to hear what Governor Inslee had to say when I asked him about being on the sidelines of this political fight. So take a listen to that.
I'm thinking of the right metaphor, analogy. I don't consider myself on the sidelines, actually, and I hope people won't. You're more like you're on the scout team, or you're a trainer,
Yeah.
you're an assistant coach, right? Think of yourself as a coach. You're coaching the people on the field how the heck they're supposed to do their job. So I do believe that all of us can be active in this role, even though you're not in elective office in that regard. What I'm doing is I'm acting as an advocate for climate clean energy efforts. I work with a group called Climate Power. They have been very successful in getting clean energy's jobs created, thanks to Joe Biden and others. I'm working with the Alliance for Gun Responsibility to advance gun safety legislation. I'm working to establish a pool of money to help forest fire victims. Wow. And I'm going to be helping some early stage inventors for some of their new clean energy technology. So I'm very active on these things, even though I'm not in public office, and I encourage people to find a way.
Yeah, so I think that's so important. I love the analogy that he used there. You know, he feels like he's a trainer, I think is what he said, or an assistant coach. I think it's so true that, we all have to recognize, no matter what, where we are in this world or in this country, that we each have a role to play in fighting back against what's going on in our country right now. It could be you choose to run for office like Governor Inslee did, starting first at the local level or state level, showing up to town halls and making your voice heard as states are trying to put in place all sorts of restrictive laws. You could be joining an advocacy organization, calling your members of Congress, and making sure that they have on file and on record how you, one of their constituents, feels about a particular issue. It could be writing an op-ed. That's something that I've done a lot, that Dave and I have done together. It could be starting a podcast. But truly so grateful for leaders like Governor Inslee, who remind us, like former First Lady Michelle Obama did at the DNC last summer, to do something. But finally, to round out our Reels segment here, Dave had a fantastic conversation with his friend, Representative Chris Deluzio, member of Congress from the Pittsburgh area. So, I loved so many things about this interview. I was bummed I couldn't be a part of it. I was traveling, but, hearing him talk about balling out in the congressional baseball game, serving in the military, what economic patriotism means to him, what it was like to join Congress at such a chaotic point in our nation's history and in the history of Congress, right, as an institution. But, I think what I want to hear Congressman Deluzio again talk about in this clip is the human side of being a member of Congress. Before he is a member of Congress, before he's Representative Chris Deluzio, he's dad, right? And he's a dad to 4 children, which is crazy and amazing. But can't imagine, what it's like to balance being a member of Congress with having 4 kids. But that's exactly what he opened up to Dave about, how he strikes that balance, how his identity as a dad, as a father, informs his priorities as a congressman, including his work through something called the Dad's Caucus. So let's hear him describe it in his own words. Let's roll that clip.
I want to ask about here is you're actually part of something called the Dad's Caucus. And I would love to hear a little bit about what that is and how you were able to do your job with 4 kids at home. And yes, you heard me right, 4 kids at home.
Yeah.
Tell us how that works.
So look, my district, Western Pennsylvania, I fly out of Pittsburgh International Airport, right? So I can get home when I'm done in Washington, let's say door to door, maybe 2.5 hours. I have a much easier commute than, say, someone who's serving from California or Alaska, right? So I can get home easier than most. I can get to Washington easier than most. The Dad's Caucus, right? These are a bunch of my colleagues who are dads who, number one, we care about things like paid family leave, child tax credit, childcare. And also thought it was important to say, like, hey, there are dads with young kids, with parenting responsibilities who are serving in Congress, just as there are moms who are doing this. And you know what? Like, we shoulder those responsibilities too, and we ought to be able to talk about it and share those stories with people. And it's as simple as that, right? Like, we care as parents and dads about our government stepping up for families who are working and struggling to make ends meet and also care for their kids. And so, you just happen to be people who are serving in Congress with those same issues to deal with, and figured let's get together and start using that collective voice we've got to talk about the reality of being a parent who works in the world. I mentioned childcare. You talk to any parents, mom or dad, who are working and trying to juggle a job and childcare, and they will tell you that childcare is a ripoff, that it's hard to find, and that we should have our government do something to fix that. Like, this is like a pro-family thing. It's a pro-job thing, so you can actually get to work. And just, the United States does so little compared to nearly every other advanced country to help families out who need some childcare.
Completely.
Yeah, Congressman Deluzio, I mean, on point, I think, about so many things, and especially, about that very issue that he just talked about. I mean, it's so true that all of these issues like childcare and paid family leave, I think of all of the failings in our society, one of them, and I think it's intentional, is that we've defined those sorts of issues as women's issues or moms' issues. Well, I mean, guess what? If you're a man, if you're a father, and you care about family, you care about providing for and being there for your family, and you care about supporting your wife as she does those things as well, as she goes out to support and provide for your family too, then guess what? These issues should matter to you too. And you should demand that your government steps up to provide those resources to help you do that. Anyway, such an important conversation, I think, with Congressman Deluzio. Shout out to Dave again for this amazing interview. And again, sorry that I couldn't be a part of it. But those are our reels for this episode. That's our episode for this week. Like I said, lots of topics that Dave and I plan to discuss in the weeks ahead. I can say we've got some fantastic guests lined up over the next few weeks too. You won't want to miss our upcoming episodes. But if you do not worry. We'll have another one of these recap episodes in a month. But as always, please like, subscribe, share, send us an email at lowlightspodcast@valormedianetwork.com. Tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like, tell us what you want to hear and who you want to hear it from. But other than that, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you back here next week.